Hey people, my name's Lucas and I live in Colorado with my wife Rachel and our 6-year-old daughter Emma. We've been married for 10 years. I thought we had a good life, a stable marriage, a happy home, nothing out of the ordinary. But now I don't know what to believe. It all started last Tuesday. I got home from work earlier than usual, maybe an hour before I normally would. Rachel wasn't expecting me, so she wasn't home yet. That wasn't strange. She often ran errands or visited friends in the afternoon. What was strange was the way Emma was acting when I walked in. She was sitting on the couch, hugging one of her stuffed animals. She looked up at me, her little face lighting up, but there was something else in her expression, something hesitant. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, setting my bag down. "How was your day?" She shrugged. "It was okay." I ruffled her hair and sat down next to her. "What did you do?" She fidgeted, glancing toward the front door like she was checking to see if anyone else was coming. Then she looked back at me, lowering her voice. "Daddy, can I tell you something?" I immediately felt a knot in my stomach. "Of course, sweetheart. You can tell me anything." She hesitated for a second, gripping her stuffed animal tighter. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "A man came to see Mommy today while you were at work." I felt my breath catch in my throat. "A man?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Did you know him?" She shook her head. "No. He wasn't like Uncle Alex or Grandpa. He was different." The room suddenly felt smaller. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Did Mommy say who he was?" Emma hesitated, biting her lip. She didn't know I saw him. I was playing in my room, but when I came out, they were talking in the living room. He was standing really close to her. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you hear what they were talking about?" She shook her head again. "No, but Mommy was laughing, like the way she laughs with you." I felt a cold chill run through me. "What did he look like?" I asked. Emma thought for a second. "He was tall, he had dark hair and a coat, and he smelled funny." "Smelled funny?" I repeated. She nodded. Like when you go to the store and walk past the cologne section?" "Perfume." Cologne. A man standing close to my wife in my house while I was at work. I felt sick, but I forced myself to smile at Emma, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. This is our little secret, okay? Don't tell Mommy we talked about this." She nodded solemnly. "Okay, Daddy." I gave her a hug, but my mind was already racing. Rachel had never mentioned anyone coming over. There was no reason for another man to be in my house. And if Emma hadn't told me, I never would have known. That night, as Rachel kissed me like nothing had happened, I felt my stomach turn. Something was wrong, and now I had to find out exactly what it was. After Emma told me about the man visiting Rachel while I was at work, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My mind kept replaying her words over and over. He was standing really close to her. He smelled funny. Mommy was laughing like she does with you. I wanted to believe there was a logical explanation, that maybe it was some contractor or someone from her work, but deep down, I knew better. That night, as Rachel and I sat on the couch watching TV, I found myself studying her. She seemed normal, maybe too normal. She laughed at the show, scrolled through her phone, and leaned her head against my shoulder like everything was fine. But for the first time in 10 years, I felt like I didn't know the woman next to me. In the next few days, I started paying closer attention. Rachel had been acting differently for a while, but I had brushed it off. Now, every little thing stood out. She was glued to her phone more than usual, always setting it face down on the counter or keeping it tucked in her pocket. She started taking longer to get ready in the mornings, doing her hair when she normally wouldn't, putting on perfume just to run errands, and the few articles I found that made direct contact with her made her eyes bleed when she looked at them. And then there were the late afternoons where she suddenly needed to go out, always with vague excuses. I didn't want to be that husband, the paranoid, jealous guy who jumps to conclusions over nothing. But something inside me kept screaming that this wasn't nothing. Then I found the receipt. It was Friday, and Rachel had already left the house to meet a friend for lunch. I was home alone, drinking coffee, trying to decide if I was imagining things or if I was actually onto something. I don't know what compelled me to do it, but I went into the kitchen and grabbed her purse. I wasn't proud of it, but after what Emma had told me, I needed answers. I wasn't expecting to find much, maybe just some random receipts, lip balm, the usual. But when I reached inside, my fingers brushed against a crumpled piece of paper at the bottom. I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was from an expensive restaurant in downtown Denver. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, dessert. The date? 2 days ago. A day she had told me she was home all afternoon. My hands tightened around the paper. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. She lied. I put the receipt back exactly how I found it and walked out of the kitchen, my mind racing. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I needed more than a receipt. If I accused her now, she'd just brush it off, say it was work, maybe claim she met with a client. No, I needed to be sure. I decided right then that I was going to find out the truth myself. And if Rachel was lying to me, if she was betraying me in the worst way possible, she wasn't going to see it coming. Finding that receipt was the moment everything changed for me. It wasn't just paranoia anymore, it was proof that Rachel was lying. But I knew my wife well enough to know that if I confronted her with just a piece of paper, she'd twist the truth, gaslight me, and make me feel like the crazy one. I needed undeniable evidence, something she couldn't talk her way out of. So I set a trap. Rachel was always careful with her phone, never leaving it unattended, never letting me catch a glimpse of her messages. But she wasn't as careful about the house. I knew if she was meeting with someone, especially in my home, she'd feel safe, like she had nothing to hide. That's where my old phone came in. I had an old iPhone sitting in a drawer, one I hadn't used in years, but still worked. That morning, before heading to work, I set it up. I cleared out all the data, put it on airplane mode, and turned on the voice recorder. Then I tucked it carefully under the bed, hidden out of sight, but close enough to pick up any sounds in the bedroom. It felt dirty, sneaky, but I didn't care. If my wife was bringing another man into our house, into our bedroom, I needed to know. That day at work was the longest of my life. I could barely focus, checking the time every 5 minutes, picturing all the worst possibilities. Was she laughing with him in my living room? Were they touching, kissing? Was he sleeping with my wife in my bed? By the time I got home, my hands were shaking with adrenaline. Rachel greeted me at the door like she always did, smiling, kissing my cheek, asking about my day like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't hiding something. I played along, ate dinner with her, watched TV, pretended everything was normal, but inside I was screaming. Later that night, after Rachel fell asleep, I carefully slipped out of bed, went to the guest bathroom, and pulled out my old phone. Maybe my heart pounded as I unlocked it and opened the voice recorder. I pressed play. For the first few minutes, there was nothing, just silence, occasional rustling. Then, at around 2:30 p.m., I heard it. Rachel's voice. At first, it was faint, like she was pacing the room, talking on the phone. I strained to make out her words, my pulse racing. Then, another voice. A man's voice. It wasn't loud, but it was there. Low, deep, confident. I couldn't make out everything they were saying, but I heard enough. Rachel, you shouldn't stay too long. Man, come on, he's not going to be home. Rachel, laughing. Still, I don't want to push it. Man, you worry too much. Silence. Then, rustling sounds. A faint, like someone kissing. I felt like I was going to be sick. I fast-forwarded, skipping ahead. More voices, more laughing. Then, something that made my blood run cold. Rachel, you know we can't do it here. Man, why not? Rachel, because it's our bed. His bed. Man, laughs. That's what makes it fun. I stopped the recording. I sat there in the dark, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white, my entire body shaking with rage. She was cheating on me in my home, in our bedroom. And now I knew. I had the proof. The only question left was, what was I going to do about it? I barely slept that night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling. Rachel curled up beside me like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't sneaking another man into our house while I was at work. Like she hadn't laughed while he suggested fucking her in our bed. My blood boiled. I wanted to wake her up right then and there, shove the phone in her face, and demand an explanation. But what would that accomplish? She'd deny it, cry, try to twist the truth, maybe even blame me. No, I needed more than just a recording. I needed to see it with my own eyes. So I waited. The next morning, I kissed Rachel goodbye like I always did before leaving for work. She smiled at me, all innocent and sweet, like she wasn't betraying me behind my back. I clenched my jaw and walked out the door, but instead of heading to work, I parked a few streets down and waited. If the pattern was real, if this guy was coming to my house while I was gone, then it wouldn't be long before he showed up, and I wasn't disappointed. Around noon, I saw him, a tall man in a dark coat walking up to my front door like he belonged there. He knocked once, then Rachel opened the door, smiling as she pulled him inside. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I recognized him. Not completely, but there was something familiar about him. I racked my brain, trying to place where I'd seen him before. A friend of hers? Someone from work? I couldn't put my finger on it, but it didn't matter. He was in my house, with my wife. I wanted to march up to that door and rip it open, but I held back. If I walked in now, I'd lose control. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to know exactly what was going on before I made my move. So I stayed in my car watching. An hour passed, then another. Finally, around 2:30, the door opened again. Rachel stood in the doorway, giving the man a lingering look before he stepped outside. He didn't kiss her, but the way they stood close, too close, told me everything I needed to know. She smiled at him. He touched her arm lightly as if to say, next time. Then he walked off, disappearing down the street like nothing had happened. I stayed in my car, staring at the house, my mind racing. Rachel was cheating on me. I knew it now, not just from a recording, not from suspicion, but from watching her welcome another man into my home. But the worst part, that nagging feeling in my gut about the man's face, that sense of recognition I couldn't shake. I knew him from somewhere, and when I finally figured out who he was, my world was going to shatter all over again. I spent the rest of the day in a fog. I went to work, but I don't remember anything I did. I ate lunch, but I couldn't taste a damn thing. My mind was locked onto one thing, that man. I knew him. I just couldn't figure out from where. I replayed the scene in my head over and over, the way he moved, the way he looked at Rachel, the way he seemed comfortable stepping into my house like he had been there 100 times before. It wasn't just some random guy she met at a bar or through work. This was different. It was personal. And then later that night, it hit me. I was sitting at my desk, scrolling through old photos on my phone, searching for something, anything that would jog my memory. And then I saw it. A picture from a barbecue we had a few summers ago. A casual backyard party with friends, beers in hand, grilling steaks while the kids played in the yard. And there, standing next to me in the photo, was him, Alex, my best friend. My stomach dropped. My hands started shaking. I zoomed in on the photo, studying his face. The same sharp jawline, the same confident smirk, the same look in his eyes that I had seen when he left my house earlier that day. It was him. Rachel wasn't just cheating on me. She was cheating on me with my best fucking friend. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to put my phone down and press my palms into my knees to stop from throwing up. I trusted him. I trusted both of them. I had let him into my home, let him sit at my table, drink my beer, laugh with my daughter, talk to me about life like we were brothers. And the whole time, he was sneaking around with my wife. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms, my vision blurred with rage. This wasn't just about Rachel anymore. Alex had betrayed me just as much as she had, maybe even worse. And now I wasn't just looking for proof. I was looking for payback. That night, I barely spoke to Rachel. I sat through dinner, nodding at the right moments, pretending to listen, but my mind was somewhere else. I was watching her, studying her, trying to see if there was any trace of guilt in her expression. There wasn't. She was completely at ease, like she had no idea I knew. Like she hadn't spent the afternoon sneaking around with my best friend. I wanted to explode right then and there, flip the table, demand answers, scream in her face. But I didn't. I needed more. After dinner, I went to check on Emma. She was sitting on her bed, coloring quietly in her notebook. She looked up and smiled when I walked in. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Can I talk to you about something?" She nodded, setting her crayons aside. "Remember when you told me about the man who came to visit Mommy?" I asked, gently. Emma's face changed immediately. Her smile faded, and she shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah," she said quietly. I felt a tightness in my chest. "I need to know more, sweetheart. Was it just one time? Or has he been here before?" She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the hem of her dress. "I don't know. He's been here before," she mumbled. I swallowed hard. "How many times?" Emma thought for a second, then held up 2 fingers. "Tuesdays and Thursdays." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Twice a week. Every week." "Did Mommy ever say who he was?" I asked. Emma shook her head. "She doesn't know I saw him." I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. "Did he ever talk to you, sweetheart?" She hesitated, and that hesitation, it made my blood run cold. "Emma," I said gently, tilting her chin up so she would look at me. "Did he ever say anything to you?" She nodded slowly. "What did he say?" She bit her lip like she was afraid to tell me. He said I was pretty, and that I looked like Mommy when she was younger." I felt my stomach turn. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. "Did he ever do anything else? Did he ever try to touch you?" I asked, barely holding back the rage in my voice. Emma shook her head quickly. "No, Daddy, he just looks at me weird, like he's thinking about something. I took a slow, deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. Did he ever give you anything? She hesitated again. Then, slowly, she reached under her pillow and pulled out a small box. My hands were shaking as I took it from her. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, small enough for a child's wrist. It had an engraving on the inside. I turned it over, and the moment I saw the words, my blood turned to ice, because I had seen that bracelet before. Years ago, on my brother's wrist, the brother who had disappeared almost 10 years ago. I felt my entire body go numb. "Emma," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you get this?" "He gave it to me," she said softly. "He said it was special." I clenched my fist so hard my nails dug into my palms. My head was spinning, my vision blurred with rage. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was something much, much worse. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. My daughter sat there clutching the bracelet like it was some kind of gift, but all I saw was a warning. A ghost from my past reappearing in the worst possible way. I forced myself to take a deep breath. I needed to stay calm for Emma. I couldn't let her see just how badly this was affecting me. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "when did he give this to you?" Emma hesitated, then whispered, "Last week. He said it was a secret and that I shouldn't tell Mommy or you." I clenched my jaw, my hands shaking as I turned the bracelet over in my fingers. I knew this bracelet. I had seen it before, years ago, on the wrist of someone I never thought I'd see again. "Did he ever come into your room?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Emma fidgeted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "A few times. He just talked, but I didn't like it. He sat on my bed once, and I pretended to be asleep so he would leave." A cold wave of rage washed over me. My grip tightened on the bracelet until my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just my wife cheating on me. This wasn't just some random affair. This was my brother. The same brother who vanished nearly 10 years ago after a massive falling out with our family. We hadn't heard from him since. No calls, no letters, no social media. It was like he had disappeared off the face of the earth. And now, after all this time, he had somehow found his way back into my home, into my wife's arms, and worst of all, near my daughter. I stood up so fast that Emma flinched. I immediately regretted it and knelt beside her, taking her hands in mine. "Listen to me, sweetheart. If he ever comes near you again, you tell me right away, okay?" She nodded, her eyes wide. "Did I do something wrong, Daddy?" God, my heart shattered. I hugged her tightly, kissing the top of her head. "No, baby, you did everything right. You're so brave for telling me." She relaxed a little and I held her for a long moment, trying to suppress the fury burning inside me. This was no longer just about Rachel's betrayal. This was no longer just about revenge. This was about protecting my daughter. And no matter what it took, I was going to make sure Ethan never set foot in my house ever again. I sat alone in my car that night, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The streets were dark, quiet, but my mind was anything but. My thoughts raced in circles, each one more sickening than the last. Rachel was cheating on me, that much was clear, but it wasn't just some random guy from work. It wasn't some fling she could pass off as a mistake. It was Ethan, my own brother. The name alone made my stomach turn. I hadn't spoken his name in years, hadn't even let myself think about him. Ethan had been gone for nearly a decade, disappearing after tearing our family apart. No one knew where he went, and to be honest, I never cared. As far as I was concerned, he was just a ghost from my past, someone who no longer existed. But now he was here, and he wasn't just back. He was in my house, in my life, in my wife's bed. And worst of all, he had been near my daughter. That part made my hands tremble. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. If it had just been Rachel, if it had just been some disgusting affair, I could have handled it. I would have been furious, sure. I probably still would have walked away. But knowing that he had spoken to Emma, sat on her, that made my blood boil in a way I had never felt before. I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know why he came back after all these years. But I knew one thing. He wasn't here by accident. Rachel had lied to me for God knows how long, but Ethan was playing a different game entirely. And the fact that he had slithered his way into my home, into my daughter's life, without me even knowing, I wanted to rip him apart. But I couldn't act yet, not until I had proof, not until I knew exactly what I was up against. Because if Ethan had come back for something, if he had plans, I needed to be 2 steps ahead. I leaned my head against the steering wheel and took a shaky breath. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about protecting my family. And whatever Ethan was after, I was going to stop him. I barely made it through work the next day. Every second that passed felt like a slow, agonizing drip of poison filling my veins with rage and unease. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think about anything other than him, Ethan. The name alone made my skin crawl. It had been nearly 10 years since I had last seen my brother. 10 years since he had walked out of our family's life, leaving nothing but destruction in his wake. And now, after all this time, he was back. And he had been in my house, near my wife, near my daughter. It made me sick. I didn't want to think about the past, but I couldn't stop the memories from creeping in. Ethan had always been the golden child, the charming one, the one everyone loved, despite the fact that he was nothing but a manipulative bastard underneath. He had a way of making people trust him, of making you want to be around him, and then, just when you thought you knew him, just when you thought you were safe, he would twist the knife. I had been the fool once. I had trusted him, looked up to him even. And how had he repaid me? By nearly destroying our family, by playing his twisted mind games until everything around him burned. And then, just like that, he had disappeared. No warning, no goodbye. For a long time, I thought he was dead. I hoped he was. But now he was here. And he had wormed his way back into my life like a parasite. I gripped the edge of my desk, trying to steady my breathing. Why now? After all these years, why come back now? And how the hell had Rachel gotten involved with him? Did she know who he was? Did she know what he was? Or was she just another one of his victims? I thought about Emma, about the way she had clutched that bracelet, about the way she had hesitated when I asked her if Ethan had spoken to her. Something about this wasn't right. This wasn't just about an affair. This wasn't just some typical cheating scandal. Ethan didn't just come back for Rachel, he came back for me. And whatever he wanted, whatever game he was playing, I was about to put an end to it. Because this time, I wouldn't be fooled. I sat in my car outside the house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers ached. I didn't want to walk inside. I didn't want to look at Rachel, knowing what she had done. But more than that, I didn't want to sit in silence anymore. I needed answers, and I was going to get them. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked inside. Rachel was in the kitchen, sipping a glass of wine like she didn't have a care in the world. She looked up when she saw me, offering a warm smile. "Hey, you're home early." I ignored her greeting, stepping closer until I was just a few feet away. "Tell me the truth, Rachel." Her smile faltered. "What?" "Don't play dumb," I snapped. "Tell me the truth about him." Her entire body stiffened. I saw the exact moment she realized what I meant. Her fingers curled tightly around the stem of her wine glass, her throat bobbing as she swallowed. "Lucas, I don't..." "Ethan." I cut her off. The name alone sent a shiver down her spine. "My brother. You've been seeing him, haven't you?" She hesitated. That was all the confirmation I needed. I took another step forward, lowering my voice. "How long, Rachel? How long have you been sneaking around with the man who tore my family apart?" Her eyes welled up with tears, fake ones. I had seen this act before. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "I didn't want any of this, Lucas." I scoffed. "You didn't want any of this? Are you serious right now?" She ran a shaky hand through her hair, looking away. "I didn't plan for it to happen. He showed up one day, out of nowhere. I was shocked too, Lucas. I didn't even know he was alive." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "And yet, instead of telling me that my brother, who's been missing for 10 years, suddenly came back, you decided to, what, lie? Sneak around behind my back?" Tears slid down her cheeks now, but I didn't care. "It wasn't like that," she said, shaking her head. He has something on me, Lucas. He threatened me." That caught me off guard. I narrowed my eyes. "Threatened you? With what?" Rachel looked away, biting her lip. I could see the war going on inside her. "Rachel," I said, my voice low, "what is he blackmailing you with?" She exhaled sharply, gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Something from before we were married. Something I thought was long buried." I crossed my arms, waiting. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He knows about the accident." A cold chill ran down my spine. I stared at her, my mind racing. "What accident?" Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, like she was bracing herself. Then she looked at me, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. "Lucas, I killed someone." The room spun. I took a step back, my head pounding. "What?" Rachel let out a shuddering breath. "It was before I met you. I was young, reckless. I was driving home from a party, and I I hit someone. A man. He died, and I panicked. I ran. I never told anyone." She wiped at her tears, her breathing ragged. "Ethan somehow found out, and he told me that if I didn't do what he wanted, he'd expose me. I felt like I was suffocating. This just went from a cheating scandal to something so much worse." I stared at the woman I thought I knew, my heart pounding. "And what exactly did Ethan want, Rachel?" She swallowed hard. "At first, just money. I gave him what I could, hoping he'd leave. But then he wanted more. He wanted me." My fists clenched. Rachel let out a sob. "I didn't have a choice, Lucas. I was scared. If the truth came out, I'd go to prison. I couldn't lose everything." I shook my head, my entire body trembling. "So you let him into our home. You let him near our daughter." Rachel broke down completely, falling into a chair, burying her face in her hands. I couldn't even look at her. Ethan was playing a dangerous game, and now I was going to end it. I stood there, staring at Rachel as she sobbed into her hands, my mind racing. I didn't know which betrayal stung worse, the fact that she had been cheating on me, or the fact that she had let him into our lives, into our home, into our daughter's life, just to protect herself. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel the weight of what she had done. But anger wouldn't fix this. It wouldn't get rid of Ethan. I needed to be smart. I took a deep breath, pushing the rage deep down inside me. "Rachel, listen to me very carefully." She looked up, her eyes bloodshot. "Ethan is not going to win this." She swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm going to stop him. But I need you to tell me everything. Every conversation. Every threat. Every single time he's been near Emma." Rachel paled, shaking her head. "No, Lucas, you don't understand. If he finds out..." "If he finds out?" I barked. "Rachel, our daughter is in danger. This isn't just about you anymore. Do you even understand that?" She flinched at my words. I grabbed my phone, already making calls. First to Tom, the private investigator who had helped me before, then to someone I never thought I'd involve, the police. I wasn't going to play Ethan's game. I was going to end it. That night, I set up hidden cameras throughout the house, ones that Rachel didn't even know about. If Ethan was coming back, I wanted every second of it recorded. I also placed my old phone with a voice recorder hidden in the living room. Then I waited. Sure enough, he came back. Thursday afternoon. I was watching the live feed from my car, parked a block away. Rachel let Ethan in, her movement stiff, nervous. She knew what was happening. She knew this was the beginning of the end. Ethan, on the other hand, was calm. Too calm. He walked inside like he owned the place, his posture relaxed, his lips curled into that same smug smirk I remembered from when we were kids. He leaned against the counter, Rachel standing stiffly across from him. "You're tense," he chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Rachel forced a laugh, but it was hollow. I can't keep doing this, Ethan." He tilted his head, amused. "Oh, and what exactly do you think your options are?" Rachel didn't respond. Ethan sighed, stepping closer. "You see, Rachel, I'm not the kind of man you just walk away from. Not when I know all your dirty little secrets, and especially not when you've been so accommodating to me." I gritted my teeth, watching the screen. "Come on, Rachel, keep him talking." Rachel swallowed. "What do you even want, Ethan? Money? More than that?" Ethan chuckled. "You already know the answer to that. Money's nice, sure, but what I really want..." He reached out, touching a strand of her hair. Power. That was it. I had seen enough. I kicked open the door so hard that it slammed into the wall. Rachel gasped. Ethan turned around slowly, his smirk widening when he saw me. Well, he drawled. "If it isn't little brother." I didn't hesitate. I charged at him, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him into the kitchen counter. "You've been in my house," I growled, my face inches from his. "You've been near my daughter." He didn't even flinch. In fact, he laughed. "Relax, Lucas," he sneered. "I didn't touch your precious little girl. I just thought she should know her real family," I snapped. I swung my fist, connecting hard with his jaw. Ethan stumbled back, spitting blood onto the floor, but still that smirk didn't leave his face. "That all you got?" he taunted. I grabbed him again, my rage boiling over, but before I could do anything else, bang, bang, bang! "Police, open up!" The second I heard those words, I stepped back, releasing my grip on Ethan. The bastard actually laughed as two officers stormed in, weapons drawn. "Took you long enough," Ethan muttered, holding up his hands as they grabbed him. One of the officers looked at me. "You the one who called this in?" I nodded, still breathing hard. "He's been blackmailing my wife, threatening my daughter." The officer's expression darkened. "We got him." I watched as they cuffed Ethan, shoving him toward the door. "This isn't over, little brother," he called over his shoulder, still smiling. "You'll see me again." The door slammed shut behind them. And just like that, Ethan was gone. Rachel stood in the corner, shaking. I turned to face her, my entire body still buzzing with adrenaline. "I want you out." Her head snapped up, tears in her eyes. "Lucas, please." "No," my voice was ice. "You led him into our home. You lied to me. You put our daughter in danger." I stepped closer, my hands shaking with barely contained rage. "Pack your shit, you're leaving." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. "I don't care about your excuses, Rachel. We're done." For once, she didn't argue. She just nodded, silent tears streaming down her face as she walked past me toward the bedroom. I stood there in the wreckage of my life, watching as my marriage officially came to an end. I should have felt broken. I should have felt lost. But all I felt was free. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Rachel had packed her things and left that night. No screaming, no pleading, just silent acceptance. Maybe she finally understood that there was nothing left to save. Emma was staying with my parents for the weekend. I needed time to process, to figure out how I was going to explain everything to her in a way that wouldn't break her little heart. She was too young to understand the depth of betrayal that had just unfolded, but I knew one thing for sure: she would never have to see Ethan again. I sat in the living room staring at the wall, replaying everything in my head: the lies, the betrayal, the realization that the person I had shared my life with for over a decade had not only cheated on me, but had endangered our daughter in the process. And Ethan. The bastard had been playing a long game, manipulating Rachel, worming his way into our lives for God knows what purpose. The police were still digging into his past, and from what I had heard, this wasn't the first time he had used blackmail to control someone. But this time, he had lost. Rachel sent me a text 2 days later. "Rachel, I know you hate me, I deserve it, but please don't take Emma away from me. She's all I have left." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "Me. You'll see her, but only under supervision and only when I say so." She didn't argue, just replied with a simple, "Okay." I had already spoken to my lawyer. Given everything, the cheating, the blackmail, the fact that she allowed Ethan into our home while our daughter was there, I had a strong case for full custody. I wasn't taking any chances. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what you think about that story. Have a good day, and bye.